This question of facts is obviously difficult because everybody's got facts to prove that we are right. So if you tell me why my boss is a psycho, then I can give you examples. This is not what we are talking about. If you remember the ladder inference, we start with a situation where we've all been living together, right? For example, a conflict we had in a meeting, or a discussion we had on a strategic discussion, or even a conflict that we had in front of the team, whatever this situation is, but we are sure that we've actually lived the situation at the same time. And then the exercise comes to try to go back to what is the situation we are talking about and try to share with each other what is your views. Can you describe to me this situation? And I will do the same. And by doing this, you realize that we actually climb a ladder very, very quickly, and that my reading of the situation, even describing it, which is supposed to be factual and objective, is very different from the description that my manager would make. Okay, so as a start, we try to look at what is supposed to be the source of conflict, and we have the same perspective on it. So one way to get out of a conflicting situation is probably to try to look at a rereading of the situation before we even move on that, right? Do you have any kind of feedback or concern or questions around this step, which is about stepping into actions on a particular situation, bearing in mind that, of course, some people can be very difficult, and therefore application might be sometimes challenging.
And maybe even sharing some of your own experience of managing your manager, where you have had an issue, a problem, or whatever. Either way, whether you are the manager and the employee or vice versa, because as Philippe said, it's very important that you manage up, you manage down, and you manage sideways. So there's always relationships in many different situations. So if you want to share or ask questions, we're here for you. This idea really of the chat is to interact and answer your questions or hear your comments. And I noticed that Patricia is here, who has done the resilience course on that we launched last September, and that will take place again in January. So welcome, Patricia. It's nice to see you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you. And I did your Coursera course also up to the end.
Wow.
Which was amazing. Yep. And I was one of the finalists of presenting.
All right.
Very nice.
It was a very awesome experience, I have to say, both of them. And it was kind of funny when I took the resilience course. I mean, so many things you tend to forget over time, but it brought it right back to mind.
Very nice.
So I try to put myself into the shoes of my manager. That only works to a certain extent because I don't know what is all coming onto her. So she reacts out of her experience and out of the environment that she acts in. I react out of my environment. And sometimes it is just very difficult to put yourself into your manager's or your peers' shoes because you don't know what the backgrounds they are. I had one encounter where I did not react on because I thought at that moment it's just not worth it. But my manager, I have the feeling, is afraid of something. Very much. She has been for 16 or 17 years with that company. She's extremely protective of us, which is on one hand nice. On the other hand, it seems to tie me a little bit down in the authority that I have. So my work is doing submissions to regulatory authorities. And no, it's not unusual that you get questions back. And at that moment, she just basically took over. Which kind of good. I have been pretty new at the company. It's now 1.5 years. But, from my perspective, I'm like, okay, I'm fine that she wants to have a major foot in into what is going to be done, but you can do it two ways. You can still let me do the work and the talking and being the leader and working in the background, or you can just take over. So I decided not to react at the moment on, because I wasn't sure how to do that. And I don't think I know her well enough that I could sit down with her and just talk about it. And then the moment is gone. If you don't do it within a certain time, I said, okay, I think I need to wait for it to re-happen and then have a conversation. It makes it difficult if you're hired for a certain job where you expect that you have certain authorities, and I don't want to say power, but the ability to do certain things, and you can't. And I'm getting to the point where I'm thinking, well, maybe, what do I want? Is it that important to me?
Old new 𝐓𝐡𝐞.
Excuse me?
I think the phone was just cut off. That's okay.
That was funny. Or do you let it slide just and do your thing? I think I'm too independent, and I think that's a problem for me overall, that I'm very independent, and I have certain things that I like to have to a certain standard. That it's difficult for me to get to this point, but the resilience course with my peers actually has helped me in getting to the point to really think about what is important to me with respect to that. Mm-hmm. And I have, since then, some things I have let slide, and others I put my foot down on, and in the end also got through with it. But it's a gamble.
Yeah.
Mm.
And it's a decision, and sometimes, and you're right, you know, everything, you try to get down to the facts.
Mm.
But there's so much coloring in from yourself. It's very difficult to really truly get down to what the things are. And often, if you get somewhat close, you realize how minor they really are.
Mm.
It's all the coloring that you put subconsciously or consciously onto it that blows a little fly into an elephant sometimes.
Mm. I think you've raised a couple of points which are very, very important in terms of, you know, at least you seem to be in kind of communication with your manager, and something, and you said, but there are certain things, you know, things are not going to move, right? Because I don't know how to address it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you mentioned about the empathy, which is try to understand, you know, the other's perspective, which I think is kind of very important. And it's not just for the sake of humanity or being nice and social. It's also to understand the perspective of the other. And when you do this, then you start to identify the thing that, you know, might stop or make people do certain things. So some people, as you said, you know, I believe she's afraid of something. She has not shared that with you. Maybe the trust is not there yet. Mm-hmm. But you can actually identify that there are some reasons that might be serious that prevent mm-hmm. her from doing something. The fact that she had the number one above her head that probably pushes her to do certain things is also a very important point for you to decide what you want to do, and maybe push mm-hmm. the cursor and do some actions with the perspective that you know that this person has got their own agendas and their own limits that she has difficulty to cope with. And by doing this, you can help her by pushing some things that she will actually be a trust building exercise. Mm-hmm. And eventually she might accept to let go certain things.
Yeah. I think it might be. It was interesting because there's a colleague of mine who also reports into her, and she actually reached out to me. She is much newer than I am, and she brought exactly that point up. It was very interesting. So that made me realize it's not just me that I see it as that there's something about our manager. I like my manager. Otherwise, she's a great person, and I like to work with her together. It's just kind of funny when you think you're hired for something, and it's like you have to tell your people what their frame is within which they can work, and what their authority and power is of what they can do, and then you have to let them run. And yes, they make mistakes, but they will learn from these mistakes.
Yeah.
And it seems like she's trying to protect us so much that we don't even get to the point of being able to make mistakes.
There, we have a message from Facebook that I would like to read to everyone of someone saying that she or he, I don't know,
Ermina Towler.
Sorry?
Ermina Towler.
Okay. Someone managing a company where I'm reading, where I have a lot of tensions, and particularly with one person in the staff, continually making reports, but there's no satisfaction, and it's getting to be more of a daily agony amongst us. The word is strong, agony. It's the talk to your manager. I'd like to talk to the manager, but it's difficult dealing with this, and nothing is done. Frustration often expressed. And we have another one. I'm still a fresher and about to start working in the corporate world from January. What suggestions do you have for me? That's a very open one. So maybe, Philippe, you want to comment on the agony element and the hardship that can happen within a team?
Well, I think that's, there's one thing we learn with management is that the situation is always different from the other, right? So there's no standard situation, and it's very difficult to advise on this particular one. But when there is a mistrust or a conflict within a team, what we discussed before actually apply exactly to the same, which is to make sure that you are part of the solution and not part of the problem. So in other words, if you keep doing the same thing by maybe complaining or reporting or even challenging, it doesn't work, then you have to do something else, right? But I would really encourage you to take the advantage of the approach that we've taken and say, are you sure that we have a good reading of the situation? I think the first thing is, unless we know exactly what's happening, what's going on there, then it's very difficult to react and to make some move, right? And I believe that this first work on appreciation is very often blinded and shadowed and by noises of perceptions and interpretation and judgment and emotion. We have to believe that there is some cleaning in our reading of the situation that has to be done before anything else. And my advice to you would be, go back to your paper and your pencil and try to really describe with your own words, with your own feelings, etc., what is it that you see in this situation. And I'm sure that a bit like the solo, it will help you sort of clarify a few things in mind, and then some solutions or some action will probably come up more easily, at least, right? I'm saying will give you the solution, but unless you do that, you will not be able to see straight into what's happening. And what's going on is probably the heart of the work we're trying to do. What is happening here? And most of the time, we don't see it. That's the issue.
And if you don't, then don't jump in if you have something to say while I'm talking. There's one point that I would like to maybe re-emphasize that was raised, the question of authority. Oh, there is a question. Sorry, Arshad. I'm still. Oh yeah, that second question. You're right about suggestions about we could have for you starting the work environment. Well, I'll try to combine what I was going to say and your question as well. When you jump into the working place and when you are in it, the question that was raised by Patricia, the question of authority, can be a problem. And this balance between you join a team and you want a certain level of autonomy to be able to build initiative and to be a part of it. And then you have someone above that is guiding or sometimes intervening or not delegating enough, and you feel frustrated because you would like to do more, or the other way around. This question of authority is one way of looking at it, is looking at the hierarchical situation where you have authority on someone, but there's another way of looking at authority when you look at authority for something. And it's a very different perspective on how you interact with people and how you build your relationships, whether you are a part of a project that is common with common goals and going in the same direction with other people, or you have someone bottom down who's telling you to execute, and you just execute it, and you're frustrated because you don't have the ownership of what you're doing. And a lot of what's going on in the working world and some of the conflicts that are happening is in this balance between how much structure do you need and how much freedom do you have to act and to be yourself. So finding that balance is part of your biggest challenge. Mm-hmm. And it's a critical point when you're together. We have one.
We just had one thing about this coming new into the corporate world, either actually a new company or even your first job. I think there's one thing that you can actually make sure it happens, it's the clarification of what are the rules of the game. And what I mean by this is that sometimes you come and, there will be a lot of words used and all positive because you need to sort of be welcome, and we want all to be on the right spirit, etc. But that doesn't actually hide the fact that there are some ways of doing things here. We are actually running this business in a certain way. I think if you can make sure that you understand by asking questions, clarification that are absolutely not aggressive, are not inquisitive, but just to understand, what is happening. The onboarding time in a company is always absolutely not used as it should be because it's more information. What I'm here talking about is really for you to be active in the process and making sure that you understand what is at stake. What are the people, who are the people around you? What are the roles here? How do we run meetings? How we take decisions? And you will understand the mechanics of how it works, and then you can start reacting to it. But unless you know this, you might make mistakes by misjudging things, by misjudging behaviors, etc. So that could be a nice agenda for the first 2 weeks of joining a company.
And on the same or similar topic, one of you is asking the question of when you have to change, and the situation that you've expressed is about COVID having a lot of turnover in the organization, and someone who's had several managers in a few months, like one new manager every month, and the last one being not so experienced in the job, but micromanaging you. It's still a question of relationship, and it's still a question of adapting, because adaptability is clearly part of the key on how you build this interaction. So putting yourself out there and being genuine and being open about who you are, and trying to adapt also to the person by giving some space to the person as well, and finding the momentum when it's possible, and not always. Because some of you are raising a lot of issues about the differences in generation. One of you is the younger person managing older people. So that can be also an obstacle. In all the situations that you raise and describe where frustration is there, and in all these topics about management, we believe that this really fundamental process of question yourself first. What is my place? What is my role? How do I contribute to this situation? Then trying to open up and lend a hand and open for open discussion and clarification, like we do in inquiry and advocacy, in putting things on the table, as Philippe explained very, very clearly. This is the heart of what we're trying to bring up and make so essential in how you build your managerial skills, how you develop your corporate links, connections, relationships, keeping in mind that a strong and trustworthy relationship will create value, and one that is not trustworthy will destroy value. So it is also your responsibility to do your best in playing that role of bringing it up by questioning yourself and opening up to the other. This is really, I know, very basic from those of you who have done the whole process and who've gone beyond all of this, but we always go back to those basics because they're always to be reminded. As Patricia was saying, you may have done it, but it's good to be back into it, because when you're in a situation, you're your nose on the wheel and you don't take that step back because you're in the conflict. So getting help from others, opening up to others is also a way of, again, growing your resilience and working across conflict. It's 7:02 French time, so we're coming to a close. We're very happy to be able to have those moments. I know they're very short, but it's on purpose so that we don't take too much of your time, but we'll do it on a recurring basis to keep the contact, to keep the relationship going, to give you chances to talk, and all the questions that you may have that we don't address now, we'll get them, we put them down. Like the topic of today is a result of our previous fireside chat where this question was raised and we decided to make a focus of it. So make sure that you stay in touch, that you're in contact. If you want to be in touch with us, be on our VIP list so we can update you on the courses. Stay on Facebook. I want to thank Taragia. I want to thank Francesco and Camila for being part of the team and helping us, and also Sami, who's not here with us tonight, but who is really helping in the support and in managing all of the community and the relationships. We'll be doing more and more of this, and stay tuned because we are developing new courses around applied, what we call applied Savoir-Relier. So you have the basics and then you have topics, and we will be developing more and more opportunities to practice and to use the method with specific situations and settings so that you can improve your management, your leadership, but very simply beyond everything, your relational competence. So thank you for being with us, everyone, and we look forward to seeing you next month. If you want to join again, spread the word. We're happy to have and see the community grow as it does. Thank you, Philippe, very much for being with us this evening. We have the fire. We're very lucky, and we really wish you a great Christmas. It's a very special Christmas this year for many of us. Difficult to have a normal Christmas with the situation, but let's stay strong and build those connections and relationships to move forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Stay in touch.
Bye. Stay in touch. Thank you. And the fire is raging also almost. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.